Hello, my name is Freya Burkout and I am a film composer, a writer and a creative technologist. As a composer, I mostly work on film and television projects, but I also write music for myself. I'm making an album at the moment. As a writer, I write poetry and essays, but I'm also developing 2 television shows and a feature film at the moment. And as a creative technologist, I do all manner of things, but you'll often find me working on interactive campaigns for art galleries, museums, so it's kind of a mixed bag. I started playing music when I was 4. I started classical piano and I was definitely making sounds before then, musical sounds. I started choir when I was 7 and absolutely got the bug then. And then I started writing music when I was 11 years old, and I knew since I was a kid that I wanted to pursue music, so it wasn't a surprise at all that I continued to do that. And when I went to do my undergrad degree, I started an experimental pop band, and then eventually that led me to film, which is where I've been for the last 12 years. I work on all sorts of things, but yeah, film, television projects, narrative, some documentary. I also work on podcasts. That's obviously been an area that's been booming in the last decade, I guess. And last year I worked on a video game, but it's definitely quite a large space. It depends what crops up and the media that people are exploring at any time. I'm really open to the kinds of projects that I work on. I work primarily on queer and intersectional feminist film. And I really love dancing between different genres. I love using different genre conventions and finding my own voice inside that. I really relish an opportunity to lean into a genre convention and find something that feels like mine there. It's always an interesting challenge, and I think it's an important thing as a composer to be able to do what the narrative arc needs you to do, what the genre is asking you to do, but also to do it in a way that's yours. Over the years, I've honed a process that I think works really well. So I obviously love coming onto a film as early as possible. If I can get on at script stage, then that is fantastic. A good script will jump off the page and into your brain like a film. And I love being able to immerse myself in that world and have conversations with directors early on so that you can really get an understanding of what the sonic identity of the project needs to be. And what I'll do at that point is write a palette. So a piece of music that feels like it's a summation of everything that the film needs to do emotionally. It needs to get big the way that the film is going to get big, and it needs to start small. So it sort of feels like a microcosm of the whole project in one piece of music. And what that allows you to do is really nut out what the sonic identity is and to get on the same page as the director to create a shared language. But also it really lays the groundwork for every other cue that's going to come from that palette. you're creating a rich tapestry, and then from that you tease out the threads to create the rest of the score. And it's always been a really valuable thing for me to do early on. It just means that, yeah, you've got a sense of trust with the director. They understand that you're on the same page. You really have a chance to find what the narrative needs to do, how the music is going to support that, how it's going to enhance what the journey is going to be for the audience. And then, yeah, have something to lean on when it comes to down the line. If you have questions about what the cues need to do, you've got something to refer back to. You've got kind of a manifesto, almost a musical manifesto. And I find that with composing, it's really interesting because there are sort of two things really that a composer needs to do at the end of the day. Essentially, we need to nail the vibe and make a director feel safe and held. And I think if you can do both of those things, then you are golden. So I mostly work on uplifting, queer joy type films, obviously like tender, delicate music for those, lots of soundscapes, but then I'll also span that to psychological horror, some very dark stuff, some comedy. So, there's a lot of space in between, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to explore those different sounds and, yeah, anchor yourself in your own practice when you do that. The relationship between directors and composers is really special. It's one that tends to stick once you find someone that you can create that trust with, a sense of openness, a real shared creative language. You really want to hold on to them tightly. And it's often something where you see in film that like directors and composers kind of get work married. They tend to stick together. I think that you also need to be able to weather the sort of creative storms, the logistical ones. As a composer, you're coming on at the end of a project. Often people are really fatigued. They've been with this story for a really, really long time, and you're kind of there to usher them through the final part of the process and sprinkle some magic on it as you go. I think the beautiful thing about the process of writing music for a film is that the groundwork is there, and this is about enhancing everything. It's about bringing out all the emotional flavors that have been explored in the project. And the best times, the best projects that you work on are the collaborations where someone's brought you on because you can bring your whole self to the table. It's where I can kind of go off and explore my own wildernesses, be free, find something really interesting and bring it back and create something so bespoke and special for the project that a director would never be able to do themselves. You're there because you are the musical director, and when you're given that sense of freedom, I think it creates something really special, a real sense of alchemy.
Maybe you could be my girlfriend and my boyfriend.
I am a person who came from an experimental pop band. I love weird sounds, I love synthy sounds, I love tactile sounds, I love bodily sounds, vocal sounds. One of the things that I think has been really valuable for me is bringing a sense of musique concrète into my film music. It's really important to me that I can use sounds that we're familiar with, orchestral sounds and synthesized sounds as well, and using sample libraries. But what makes my music different is that I am able to bring something really strange to the table sometimes, and recording your own samples and ideas is a huge part of that. So for me, vocal layers are kind of in everything that I do, including creative tech. It's really important to me that there's a human element there, and I think there are times where in psychological horror, for example. There's a lot you can do with the uncanny valley vibe. Having something that's human, but it's not quite right, and you don't know why. You just can't put your finger on why it's so strange. I think I like to work in that space to explore voice in a way that is weird, and then also voice in a way that's just warm and tender, and it holds you, and it's human, and it feels so connected. So for me, that part of my practice is really important. And as a professional singer, it's just a layer that I turn to every time. It's an important textural part of my music. I also use a lot of interesting instruments that I have found from around the world. So every time I'm traveling, I like to look for little trinkets that would add something different to what I'm making. I bought this kalimba in East Africa. And I think these kinds of things, they really make a difference to how individual your sound is, how much you can stand out. I also have a bunch of bells. I saw something recently that said that composers were obsessed with bells, and I was like, oh no, that is definitely me. I have so many prayer bowls. I have so many weird metal instruments that I like to strike. And these are really beautiful. I've used them a lot, and I mean, this is a really big one. More bells. I think I got these in India as well. I've used them many, many times.
Did you name her Shiloh too? Are you happy?
I love how varied the projects are that I work on. Film is where my heart lives, so that is absolutely what I want to be spending most of my time on. I love being able to delve into a project and really immerse myself in the story world and create something sonically that's really special, something that you could never imagine the project being without, and something that when people listen to the soundtrack, they are transported back to that world. That is my goal. And at the end of the day, the reason why I work on film is because I love telling stories, and I love changing culture with stories as well. I think especially as underrepresented people in film, it's really important to remember that there's a power to having an agenda. There's a power to using storytelling to change people's minds about political issues. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I have an agenda with the films that I work on, with feminist films, with queer film. It's really important for us to keep telling boundary-pushing stories so that we change people's minds by getting into their hearts first. And that's what inspires me. So I look forward to the films and television that I work on in the future, and the exciting stories that I get to bring to life with music.